Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to the Defining Latin America's Sustainable Aviation Fuel and Feedstock Landscape. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Harry Marples, the Content Director for Sustainable Aviation Futures Latin America. Sustainable Aviation Futures hosts a global series of high-level aviation decarbonisation conferences, bringing together the entire value chain to network, connect, and discuss the opportunities and action plans to scale up sustainable aviation and SAF to reach the goal of achieving global net zero emissions by 2050. This year, for the first time, we are running a Latin America edition of the event, taking place in Sao Paulo, and are very fortunate to be supported by a number of different supporting partners across the industry, including Vuelo Limpio, SkyTeam, ANAC, amongst many others. Over the next 60 minutes, our experts will be sharing their insights and perspectives on the opportunities for Latin America to accelerate global opportunities for SAF and become a producer of SAF globally, with a focus on policy, feedstock, and technology availability, as well as the importance of international collaboration to scale the availability of SAF. This webinar is being hosted ahead of Sustainable Aviation Futures Latin America, taking place in Sao Paulo from the 31st of March to the 2nd of April. Today, we'll provide a quick snapshot into some of the topics that will be discovered at the event, and I'm very pleased to announce that all of the panelists joining us today will be participating in the event. The three-day Congress will feature 250 aviation and energy experts from across the value chain to discuss the latest regional SAF market, as well as the exciting opportunities in Brazil and beyond. This week marks the early bird week for Sustainable Aviation Futures, meaning you can save up to $1,000 on passes for the event. Don't miss the opportunity to join the entire aviation value chain and discuss this exciting market. For more information, please visit safcongresslatam.com or email Nick Cassidy, whose details can be found on the screen. Before I hand over to today's moderator, just to quickly remind you that this session will be recorded and distributed to you after the discussion. There is also a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, so please do ask as many questions as you can, and our panel will do our best to answer as many as possible. With that, I would like to hand over to today's moderator, Deborah Lima. Over to you, Deborah.
Hi, Harry. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today, participating in such an important discussion for all of us. First of all, of course, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Harry and the entire organization team of Sustainable Aviation Futures for this very kind invitation. Thank you for the opportunity. As mentioned, my name is Deborah Lima. I am the Business Development Manager working for the UK government's Department for Business and Trade, but I am based in Brazil. I'm here representing Brazil today, and together with a great panel with me. And I would firstly ask them to introduce themselves very quickly, guys, so we can kick off with the discussion. First of all, perhaps if Marcela can introduce herself, and then we pass on to the other colleagues. So Marcela, over to you for a quick introduction.
Thank you, Deborah. And first of all, I'd like to thank as well the organizers of this event for inviting me, and of course, the National Civil Aviation of Brazil to take part of such an important discussion. I am Marcela Anselmi. I'm the Head of Environment and Energy Transition here at the National Civil Aviation Authority. Hello, everyone.
Great. Thank you very much, Marcela. Thank you for your presence here today with us. Second, Rodrigo, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sure. So thank you once again. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Rodrigo Teixeira Pinto, and I've been working for Axons for 12 years now, a technology company. And as you, Deborah, I'm also based in Rio. I was previously based in France, where we have our headquarters. And I'm today in charge of the commercial activities for Axons here in Latin America. So very glad to be here today to exchange with you all about the perspectives for this very challenging market.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Rodrigo, for your introduction and for being today with us. Now passing on to Romina, who's representing Chile here with us today. Thank you, Romina.
Hello, everyone. I'm Romina Altamirano. I'm from Chile, in particular the Ministry of Energy of Chile, and working as field market and regulation manager. And I'm responsible for the energy transition of the maritime and aviation sector. I'm here because I'm author of the Chile First Sustainable Aviation Fuel Roadmap, and well, so glad to be here sharing the perspective of Chile in this topic.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Romina, for being with us. And last but not least, the final member of our panel here today, Ricardo. Your turn to introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Deborah. My name is Ricardo Bernardi. I'm a partner of Bernardi Schnapp law firm based in São Paulo. The law firm is dedicated to mainly to the aviation sector for the past 35 years. Lately, we have been involved with sustainability matters, especially SAF, which is a very relevant matter to the aviation industry. And I have been personally involved with this project, assisting a company, Decarbo, which has been dedicated to understand and help airlines and users of the airline services in projects associated with SAF.
Perfect, Ricardo. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your contribution. Well, once again, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. Today we have a few goals in the next hour, which is mainly to understand how the region, the Latin America mainly, can scale SAF production. And to achieve this goal, we will be discussing many things throughout the next hour, prospects for incentives to scale SAF, mainly how the recently approved Field of the Future can provide market assurance. Also, we discuss how Latin America can increase our production to reach a certain number of global production by 2050. And of course, I invite everyone to ask questions. As Harry mentioned in the beginning, we will have time at the end for Q&A. So please feel free to participate, to write in the chat your questions, and I'll be glad to share them with our panelists today. Well, have a great webinar, everyone. And without further ado, I'll begin with our discussion today with Marcela. Once again, Marcela, thank you very much for being with us today. My first question for you today, Marcela, is specifically for Brazil. So how you think Brazil is developing its national policy for fostering SAF production, and specifically how the Brazilian aviation sector is considering SAF for its decarbonization goals? Over to you.
Thank you, Deborah. I just want to confirm first if you are hearing me, because I'm having some instability with my network. It's okay?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Yeah.
Thank you. So this is a great question, because I think it sets the ground of integrating the two sectors, aviation and energy. And in Brazil, we are seeing this in an integrated way. So the Fuels for the Future, which you mentioned, was just approved last year, and it's now a law in Brazil, and it was built together with the aviation sector, with all stakeholders, and with the energy sector as well. So we see this as a strategy, a national strategy for developing a new market in Brazil that will allow for the decarbonization of aviation, of air transport in Brazil. Brazil is very committed with the international goals, environmental goals that were set by the International Civil Aviation Organization. So the 5% reduction of CO2 emissions from international transportation by the use of SAF by 2030. And of course, the long-term goal of net zero by 2050. So under this background, all the national discussions took place. And I would like to, let's say, set the discussion in three main pillars. The national policy for SAF in Brazil is organizing three pillars. The first one is the regulatory framework, which comes from the bill, the Fuels for the Future law. It provides the mandate for the domestic aviation to reduce CO2 emissions by the use of sustainable aviation fuels. This is a different rationale from other countries, and I think it was very innovative, and it's well fitted for the Brazilian market. We are not aiming at let's say, a mixing in the fuel that is used by aviation. We are aiming at decarbonizing the sector. And by decarbonizing, I think SAF is paramount. That's why I think our mandate is different from the European mandate and from other countries that we used as benchmark. And also it allows for a more, let's say, efficient logistical distribution of the fuel. We had chosen let's say, the traditional way, which we have here in Brazil for ground transportation on the volumetric mandate, it meant that all airports in Brazil would require to have the supply of fuels. By a more flexible way, aiming at the reduction of CO2, we are providing the mandate not for the suppliers of the fuel. The main, let's say, focus and target of the mandate are the airlines, and they will be able to, let's say, have access to the benefit from SAF without having to fly to those airports in which there is the supply of SAF. So the law also allows for, let's say, market-based mechanisms such as book and claim, to provide, let's say, the fuels and the means of this reduction to all airlines that operate in Brazil. So this is the first pillar, the regulatory framework, which provides the regulatory stability that is needed for investments. The second pillar in our national policy is the finance and investments. This, I think, came with a lot of, it was a good news last year when the National Development Bank, BNDES, together with FINEP, they published a call for interest from the market to see which actors, stakeholders would be willing to invest in the production of SAF and also maritime fuels. And the response from the market was amazing, because we had a lot of interest from the market to invest in the production of SAF in the Brazilian territory. So it was 6 billion reais for this specific call of BNDES and FINEP, which is about $1.1 billion. Of course, when we look at other countries, it may not look so ambitious, but in our conditions, in Brazilian conditions, it was very, very ambitious. So I think it shows the interest from the government to foster the production in Brazil, in the Brazilian territory. We don't want to export the feedstock. We want to have the production here in our country. And the third pillar, which is also so important, and it's also aligned with the Brazilian Fuels for the Future, we have chosen an agnostic policy, which means that we have not chosen any kind of feedstock. We haven't been out in any way specific pathways. We are looking at the sustainability of the fuel. And for that, we need to invest in research and development. So we do have as a strong pillar in Brazil, work with academia and look for new pathways, explore new feedstocks. We do have here in Brazil, Macaúba, a huge potential for the production of SAF. So working with Embrapa and with our university is very important. That's why the Ministry of Ports and Airports, together with the Ministry of Science and Technology in Brazil, they have make a specific budget to invest 12 million reais this year, which is about $2.1 million for research and development of new feedstocks and everything that is needed to, let's say, to complement what is the national policy. And just to finalize in your question, I think it's important also to highlight that it's not, let's say, a done policy. We have not reached the end. It's just the beginning. And we, the National Civil Aviation Agency, together with the ministries involved, with the National Agency of Petroleum and Biofuels, we have an open dialogue with the Brazilian society, with all stakeholders, to see what else is needed. So we are having those discussions, ongoing discussions at this moment in the Connection SAF that brings together everybody, the public and the private sector, the academia, to think about new ways and new, let's say, tools, policy tools that will be needed in our context to foster this market and to allow for the decarbonization of the aviation sector, which is the, let's say, the final goal. Thank you.
Perfect, Marcela. Thank you. Thank you very much. Indeed, integrating sectors is something that we need to count on to develop such a sector as SAF. Of course, Fuels of the Future, as you mentioned, is a good example of that. And very, very interesting to see the pathway that ANAC is following in order to make this viable, putting together those 3 pillars, as you mentioned: regulation, financing, P&D, of course. And very, very interesting to see that you guys are agnostic when it comes to pathways for scale of production. That's very, very important for as well. Thank you. I'll come back to you later on, but now I'll pass on the microphone to Rodrigo. Thank you for being with us here again, Rodrigo. Well, my question for you, considering Aixen's experience in the fuels market, as you mentioned when you introduced yourself, what technology and feedstock opportunities you think offer the most potential for Latin America market?
Okay, Deborah, thank you for your question. Very, very interesting question. And I think we can start saying that Latin America, we have very good, I would say, climate conditions, robust agricultural ecosystem, and also a major biofuel market with the ethanol and the biodiesel production we have in some countries here, like in Brazil, just mentioned by Marcela. So all this allows us to say that here in Latin America, we can really be a leading SAF producer worldwide. So if we look a little bit deeper in detail on feedstocks and the corresponding technologies, we see that we have potential feedstocks for the EFA pathway, as already mentioned by Marcela. We have a reality today, which is soybean oil, and this is clearly a huge quantity that we have in Brazil, in Argentina. Other lipid feedstocks like used cooking oil and also animal fats. Of course, we have potential feedstocks for a near future, which is the macaúba. Even if we have been seeing that some of these raw materials can face some, I would say, challenges in terms of pricing, competitiveness of pricing, and even availability, which is the case for macaúba in the short term. We see that EFA projects are moving forward in the short term, and this is very, very positive for the SAF industry in the region. But I think that I would really highlight the huge potential that we have here in the region for the ethanol to jet pathway. Because here in Latin America, and again, mainly in Brazil and in Argentina as well, we have a very, very low carbon ethanol and a low cost ethanol as well. So we have been seeing projects moving forward very, very quickly and with very, very good perspectives. So this, for me, seems to be the technology that will offer the most potential for Latin America in the coming years. But besides EFA and the ATG, the alcohol-to-jet pathways, which I would say are the most short-term perspective pathways and feedstocks, I think it's also important to highlight 2 other feedstocks with a big potential in Latin America, and I think also in Chile, but Romina can maybe comment on this later on. First one is what we call the solid biomass, like any type of woody biomass, straw-like biomass, basically any kind of agricultural and woody residues. Here in Brazil, we have a lot of eucalyptus, bagasse, just some examples. So with this solid biomass, we can first convert them into ethanol. This is what we call the 2nd generation ethanol. And then with this ethanol, we can go to the alcohol-to-jet pathway, as I mentioned before. But we can also take this solid biomass and gasify it, do a biomass gasification, produce a synthesis gas, which is basically CO2 and hydrogen, and convert this syngas into SAF via the Fischer-Tropsch reaction. So this is a very promising pathway and potential feedstocks here in the region. And just to finalize, and maybe in a more mid-long-term perspective, we have been seeing a lot of green hydrogen projects moving forward in the region. And we know that we have a big potential to capture all the CO2 that are emitted every day from in different industries. I would say, for example, in ethanol production, we emit some CO2. This CO2 can be captured. So capturing the CO2 and having green hydrogen, we have also some potential feedstocks again via Fischer-Tropsch. We can produce SAF, what we would call the eSAF or the e-fuels. So I think these are the main feedstocks and corresponding pathways. I tried to give few elements for each one. And I understand that we have several possibilities, but I think it's very important to note that each project has its own context, and sometimes it's not that easy or straightforward to choose the best pathway. So they can rely on technology licensors also to be guided, I would say, or to find out the best technology solution, or even a mix of different technologies. This is also possible. I think it's good for a start.
Indeed, Rodrigo, it's great for start. Thank you for your contribution. Of course, we're talking about the place in where we have good climate conditions, a very well established biofuels market. So this is already a great beginning, especially if you compare to other regions. And you're right. I mean, we do have a range of available feedstocks. Of course, they will differ in terms of the project development, pricing in the future. But it's already a very well established beginning, to say the least. Thank you. Now I'd like to bring up more government perspective, actually from a different country. We have different countries being represented here with us today. I'll hand down the microphone to Romina, who is here representing the Chilean Ministry of Energy, as she mentioned. And actually, Romina, I want to hear the same. I want to ask you actually the same question I just asked Rodrigo, because I'm very curious to hear your Chilean perspective. So same question I asked previously. What technology and feedstock opportunities offer the most potential for Latin America, of course, but more specifically to Chile?
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, totally agree with Rodrigo in terms of what are the different pathways and raw materials that we can use in Latin America. But in particular in Chile, we have been working in the first feasibility study for production of SAF in Chile. This is a study that will to analyze what are the different pathways and raw materials that we have in Chile, and what are the feasibility to produce SAF, in particular in the different regions, because we are a long and narrow country, so we have different geographies, and this open the possibility to generate different pathways for the production of SAF in Chile. In particular, this study is going to give results this year, so probably we're going to have more certainty about what we can do in Chile in the next years. But consider the opinion of the industry, the different stakeholders that today work in the current fuel market. They consider that there are a lot of pathways that we can consider, and the first one, obviously, HEFA use cooking oil. Currently, we are producing renewable diesel, copper set renewable diesel. So this is an opportunity, the next step to produce copper set SAF. Additionally, we have non-food crops, for example, camelina. This is a crop that is very special because, first of all, this do not compete with food production, and it grows on marginal lands or extreme weather. So it's very special for the geography of the country. Additionally, we have a strong forestry industry from Biobío region, for Biobío to Aysén region. This is southern of Chile. This is an industry that the focus is on domestic uses of for buildings, etc. But in this case, we see that this raw material has other priorities, but probably we can consider the waste has an opportunity to produce stuff in our country. And finally, considering synthetic fuels. Synthetic fuels, we know that it's something that needs more maturity in terms of the advances of the technology. Fischer-Tropsch is obviously one of the options, but we are also considering, for example, methanol to jet. This is other technology that today it's not approved, but ASTM standard, but it's in evaluation. So this is an opportunity to us because methanol is a fuel that is so you can use it for different I don't know, for maritime sector, for aviation sector. So this is a great opportunity to use these kinds of pathways, and it's necessary to activate these kinds of pathways to generate other kinds or diversify the industry of synthetic fuels. So in general, the hydrogen or the renewable hydrogen is very important to our country. We have two instruments that are essential for the development of the energy industry. The first one is in Green Hydrogen National Strategy. We are planning to produce SAF a cheap price. So, and in addition, we have another instrument that is the Green Hydrogen Action Plan, which is other instrument that seeks to promote the decarbonization of the different sectors, and each sector plan to participate in the achievement of the goals of the national strategy with different actions that are very specific. In particular, the SAF roadmap, which is a document that I participate as author, is in this action plan. So for us, it's a priority to foster the development of synthetic fuels in Chile.
Great, Romina, thank you very much. Very interesting to see the trajectory that Chile has been following, especially to think about similarities, but also differences with Brazil. Of course, we're talking about a country with a very unique geography. So thank you very much, and also for the comments you made also regarding hydrogen industry. We know that's something that Chile is particularly interested in. So thank you for that. And I'll come back to you later. But now to close our first round of questions, I would like to invite Ricardo to also share his perspectives. Ricardo, we've been talking about regulation and how it is one of the pillars that Brazil has been following. So question for you, how can the legislation which instituted the National Program of Sustainable Aviation Fuel provide market reassurance to the industry, mainly to invest in SAF? And also, what do you think are the challenges in this?
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you very much. Again, I'm honored to be here in this panel, especially in this International Reducing CO2 Emissions Day, 28th January. So that's a very important day. It's a very important matter. Well, the question is relevant because it affects costs and how legislation can help overcoming cost issues. Costs not only related to production of SAF. We know just for setting up and constructing a SAF plant, investments are over $1 billion. So it's a huge investment, and also commercialization, because the cost of SAF, as we know, is more than 2 or 3 times depending on the pathway compared to fossil fuels. So there are challenges to be overcome. A Brazilian Congress, and getting to the answer, Brazilian Congress has recently passed a legislation which instituted a National Program of Sustainable Aviation Fuel, which aims at encouraging research, production, and commercialization of SAF. The program was overall very well structured and follows several of the recommendations of the World Economic Forum about the matter. I know Marcela has already provided a very good overview about the legislation, so I will try to cover some aspects which has not been specifically discussed. So in terms of production, so there is a part of the legislation dealing with production. In terms of production of SAF, as we know, it's not only necessary to assure availability of feedstock, but it's also required that such feedstock follows sustainability criteria in a life cycle basis. Legislation in Brazil correctly determined that the National Oil and Gas Agency will have jurisdiction to determine the carbon reduction emission levels on each SAF pathway, according to the respective LCA, life cycle assessment, comparing to fossil emissions, and according to methodology developed by ICAO. More specifically, in according with ICAO parameters, Brazilian legislation provides that emission reduction calculations will consider the entire cycle to determine SAF emission reductions from wheel to wake, taking into consideration all emissions occurred in the production process and transportation of SAF. This alignment with ICAO methodologies is important to assure that reduction levels of SAF produced in Brazil and sustainability of Brazilian produced SAF are internationally accepted and not questioned. And this is an issue, an important issue, because if these assessments are not overall accepted, there could be issues and challenges in terms of to what extent SAF produced in Brazil would indeed reach the reduction levels perpetrated to be reduced or that are supposed to be reduced. So this system created by Brazilian legislation will assure that the reduction levels of SAF produced in Brazil are not questioned. In terms of commercialization is a big challenge given the associated costs and what's an issue in Brazil and in all Latin America region. There is a long way, and it's important to say that there is a long way to cross to cross in order to crack the chicken and the egg dilemma, and there is no easy solution for that. Right? When starting to use SAF, scalability of SAF, and reach a cost-effective situation. Just as a context, airline industry in Brazil has been heavily affected by tax costs on fuel, tax costs generally, and one specific matter, especially in Brazil, which is cost of litigation. Brazil is the most litigious country affecting airlines in the whole world, what makes it extremely difficult for airlines to operate and bear the costs associated with SAF. According to the National Program of Sustainability Aviation Fuel, the Brazilian Aviation Agency will establish a mandate, as was well said here, as of 2027 for domestic operations to reduce emission by using SAF according to the following proportion. So just repeating because it's important, 1%, 27 and 28, 2%, 29, 30%, 2030, following 1% per year until reaching 10% reduction in 2037. But wisely, the legislation allows an act to modify these parameters for reaching these goals based on alternative ways, like offsetting market-based solutions, or even changing this proportion. And this is very relevant because otherwise imposing excessive cost to the airline could harm the industry, which is a very important industry, but an industry that does not have enough economic capacity to bear all these costs associated with mandates. So the mandate must be flexible. And another point, just to finish, it is not specific on the legislation, but in addition to the mandate, even flexible, another way to incentivize commercialization by trying to decrease costs would be by tax incentives, as the US, following the US approach rather than the European approach in terms of ways or policies to enhance and incentivize production and commercialization of SAF.
Perfect, Ricardo. Thank you. Thank you very much. Great to have a regulatory perspective as well. Very interested to mention the importance that ANP will have for the sector and how we, of course, have to take into consideration international standards to scale up our production. And the, well, chicken and egg dilemma is a challenge for every new industry. I completely agree with you. We are living this with hydrogen. We have the same for SAF. So it's important to not forget any part of this scheme, let's put it this way. Thank you very much for your contribution. I see that we have some questions popping up already here in the chat. I will do one more round of questions for the 4 of our panelists here, and then I'll get back to the questions. So please, guys, send more. We'll be more than happy to answer in just a few minutes. But right now, I want to get back to Marcela and take the consideration that we are, we want to discuss a little bit how Latin America as a region is positioning itself in this new industry. So Marcela, question for you: how the creation of an integrated Latin America strategy for SAF could help foster the creation of a regional market? And do you think that are there any challenges preventing this to happen?
Thank you, Deborah, for this question. And I think it's important to foster this discussion in the Latin American region, because we do have a potential. As Rodrigo said, we do have the feedstocks, the technology. We are producing already biofuels. So we need to explore all this potential in the Latin American region. If we look at this at the national level, national strategies in isolated matter, we are not going to be able to scale up this market here in the region. And I think the challenge is twofold. First of all, we need to scale up an industry, as Ricardo mentioned, that has a lot of costs associated with the establishment of the capital for producing SAF. Let's say the refineries, they are very, very expensive. So when a producer, from a standpoint of the producer, look at the Brazilian market, he needs to see, okay, do I have enough demand to have an investment return? So if we look at this in an isolated manner, we may not have the, let's say, all the incentives, especially in smaller countries, to allow this industry to foster. And the other challenge is, at the same time, we need to bear in mind that our industry, our civil aviation industry in our region, has still a huge potential to grow. We have a very limited connectivity in our region. When we look at the number of passengers per habitant in the Latin American region, is much smaller than other regions such as Europe or the US, for instance. So we need to provide more access to our citizens to be able to travel. And this is not, let's say, something that has a public interest behind, because in countries such as Brazil, and it goes for Colombia as well, for Mexico, air transport is, let's say, a national interest for public service. So all of those together, let's say those two challenges need to be considered together. And that's why having an integrated market in Latin America is so important, because then you have this ability, we can scale up, let's say, the production. We're going to be able to, let's say, the producer in Chile is not looking only for the Chile airlines, but is looking for the whole market, for the hubs we have in our region. And it helps them in terms of returning their investments, and also help the airlines and the aviation sector to have access to a product that will probably cost less than, let's say, trying to have access to this product from other regions importing. I think the worst case scenario to our region is to be feedstock exporters and then to import from other regions the final product, the sustainable aviation fuels, because then it's going to be more expensive to our industry, and we are not going to develop the full potential we have in terms of SAF production.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Marcela. I agree 100% with you. We do have to explore all the potential which exists not only here in Brazil, but Chile and other countries of the region as well. I'm sure that isolated strategies will not take us where our potential could take us to. And of course, the chicken and the egg dilemma that Ricardo was mentioning. So demand versus production is one if we look individually, and a completely different one if we look with a regional perspective. So thank you very much for your contribution. Now I want to get back to the conversation on technologies and routes and pathways. And my second question for Rodrigo is on that. Rodrigo, what are the technologies risks and how the industry is working on its mitigation? Because we understand there is still a lot of risks when it comes to this.
Thank you very much, Deborah. This is a very, very interesting question. And I would say this is almost my daily job, because technology de-risking is definitely the real job of a technology licensor. And if I talk about Axons, we are part of a institute of research, IFP Énergie Nouvelle, and this is a century research institution in France. So developing technologies and de-risking them for the industry is really their core business, our core business. So in IFPEN, we start the research work and the very beginning of the technology development in lab scale, I would say, and then we will scale up this technology really step by step, little by little. And this scale up exercise is very methodical, and as a research center, we are very careful, very conservative, I would say. So once the technology development goes from IFPEN to Axons, the technology licensor, it means that we are really in the very final phase of the technology development, and we are able to provide guarantees of performance to the market, and the technology is ready for commercialization. And I just want really to explain that this is sometimes a decades process, a very, very long process to put a technology in the market. But in any case, and sometimes people forget about it, it's very important to understand that all these SAF technologies, they are not like brand new technologies. What I mean is that most part of them, they have a very strong, a very solid technical basis. And for example, we mentioned in the beginning about the alcohol to jet pathway. So to convert ethanol into SAF, you have different process steps, and all these process steps are existing technologies from the petrochemical world, from the refining world, that are in operation for decades. And our job now was mainly to put them all together and to adapt them for ethanol impurities or ethanol processing. But I would say it's minor when it comes to the whole development or the whole life of the technology. So this was ethanol to jet was, for example, a very straightforward, very quick development with almost no risk for the technology itself. But on the other hand, it's not always easy like this. For example, we mentioned here in my previous answer, the biomass gasification. So again, here, the bases were there. We know how to gasify coal, for example. There are several units for coal gasification in operation around the world. But when we started developing the biomass gasification, we understood that we would have big challenges to tackle. So at that time, and this was like 15, 20 years ago, we decided, Axons and partners, we decided to really to take time, invest time and money to develop this technology. And we spent like $200 million, and we built we call it a pre-commercial unit for biomass gasification. We operated this unit for 3 years and a half. And the main point was not to produce SAF, was really to gather data, to have enough data to be able at the end of the day to provide technical guarantees, guarantees of performance for this technology, and to make this technology the most robust, I would say, as possible for different types of feedstock. So this took us a lot of time, a lot of money, but we did this job, and today this technology is in the market. We have 2 references in the world, not yet in Latin America, but I hope it will come very, very soon, because we have a very good potential here for this pathway as well. But my message here is quite clear. I think, to make it short, technologies are ready. And as I said, starting point of the risk can be very different from one technology and others. But for each technology, we did a de-risking process that are adapted for each technology. And today we have technologies that are ready for the market and ready to be in operation. And of course, I think we cannot misunderstand that the fact that these units are starting to produce SAF, and that will be more and more units producing SAF, there will be a natural learning curve of these units. So of course, we always will be learning, and there will be always happening something different from each project and others. But here we are not talking about the risk of the technology, but it's more about improvements on the operation, and this happens in any kind of industry, and it will happen also in the SAF industry. And as a licensor, we have a dedicated technical team here in Latin America, and we will be on site during the whole life of the plant, during the whole time of operation, for technical assistance and operation improvement. But I would clearly dissociate this from the technology risk.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Rodrigo. Of course, this is a long process, but necessary. Very interesting. You mentioned that this is not a brand new process. We're talking about well-established foundations, at least. And of course, this should be a positive aspect for this new industry. Great that we have a technology licensor with us to explain all of that. Okay, moving on now with the conversation, and conscious of our time, I'll ask my colleagues to be very brief in the following questions, because I really want to have some time to check the Q&A. So now I'm getting back to you, Romina, also about Chile. We already spoke about a lot of how the pillars that Brazil are taking into consideration to develop our industry. So what about Chile? What actions and goals does Chile propose to promote the development of SAF? And also, if you could briefly mention the main projects that are currently seeking to produce SAF, that would be great.
Well, first of all, I would like to highlight that all the matters related to sustainability in aviation have been centralized in Vuelo Limpio program. This is a program that is managed by the Sustainability Energy Agency, the Ministry of Energy, and the Ministry of Transportation and Telecommunications. Very important to see that we have a very clear focal point in all topics related to SAF. Second, we have a SAF roadmap, as mentioned before. This is a document that was published in 2024. This is a document that has different actions about how do we want to achieve a goal. The goal is to use 50% of SAF in 2050. And this is a very important, because to achieve this goal, we promote the development of 5 pillars and 26 actions. The different pillars are, for example, capacity building, regulation, market development, SAF ecosystem, and technology. This is a very important point because, as mentioned before, different stakeholders and different public institutions are working on that. This is not only the transport sector, this is not only the energy sector. We are working very close to understand that this is a problem not only for energy, it's a global problem that different institutions are involved. In terms of the projects, well, we have 3 that I think that are important to mention in this webinar. The first is HIF Global, High Innovative Fuels. It's a project that is located in Magallanes region in the southern Chile. Well, as you know, in Chile we have favorable conditions for wind energy generation in the southern Chile. So this is the world's first operational pilot plant for synthetic fuels. And for us, we feel very proud of that because this plant currently is producing synthetic gasoline, GLP, synthetic GLP, and they're planning to produce SAF in the future. The problem is that the project is awaiting approval for methanol to jet pathway. This is probably a challenge, but the good news is that HIF Global plans to no, it's not planning. They have received on December the first direct air capture equipment, and the facility will be able to produce 600 tons of carbon annually. So this is a very important part of this plant, this pilot plant, because the carbon capture and the biogenic carbon, it's a challenge for the production of synthetic fuel. So they're exploring this pathway, and something that is working right now. The second project is located in Bio region. This is the Bio region. It's a place where there is a strong forestry industry. So here the different companies are working together to produce e-fuels with biogenic carbon and renewable hydrogen through Fischer-Tropsch process. And well, they're doing the different studies to analyze the feasibility, but this is a very important point because they're very well located in terms of logistics. For example, they're very near to ports, very near to the feedstocks, very near to the industry that is very involved in the generation of biomass. So I think that it's very interesting in terms of production of synthetic fuels as well. And finally, ENAP, the National Petroleum Company of Chile. This is the main and only refinery of the country. They today are producing co-processed diesel, renewable diesel, and they're planning to produce SAF. Currently, they're in a proof of concept test that we will see results in the first quarter of 2025. And with this test, they're going to evaluate the feasibility of producing SAF in ENAP refineries. And just to give you more information about other projects, I'm going to give you details of each company that it's doing, that it's supporting the roadmap. But we have an agreement. It's a public-private SAF agreement. This was managed by Vuelo Limpio program. It's a document that you can see in the Vuelo Limpio webpage where different companies of the country present how they're going to contribute to the development of SAF in Chile. They participate in all the value chain of the SAF. So it's very interesting to see that 28 companies of the country today are very know that this is it's an objective that is achievable. So we are very proud to present to the world what the different companies want to do in Chile in terms of SAF.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Romina. Again, very interesting to see the paths that Chile has chosen, the initiatives that are being promoted, and consequently the initial projects that are coming up. So thank you for that. My final question is for Ricardo. We have been talking about the involvement of different sectors for scaling up SAF. So Ricardo, how you think cross-industry collaboration mitigate risks associated with scaling sustainable aviation?
I think I will answer saying how industry collaboration could incentivize scaling sustainable aviation, because it is possible. In short, airline corporate customers actually could and should contribute to incentivize scaling of SAF. This contribution can occur in the voluntary markets, in which environmental attributes are negotiated. Environmental attributes resulting from SAF consumption. In these markets, corporations could purchase from airlines the environmental attributes resulting from SAF emission reductions to account in their own inventories as Scope 3, and then contribution to pay additional SAF costs. The additional SAF costs we previously mentioned, which is 2 or 3 times comparing to fuel costs. What's the context for this situation? As we know, and there are many studies available about that, major corporations like the Fortune 500 listed companies have been forced by its own consumers to adopt ESG or sustainable practices. And consumer decisions tend to follow these directives. Companies which do not adopt policies or these sustainability policies will likely lose market share and tend to face difficulties in access to credit and other consequences. And these consequences should be also not all of them are, but should be established by law in a way to force not only the airline sector, but all other sectors to adopt sustainable practices. In this context, corporate airline customers can contribute by instituting voluntary sustainability programs for reducing their indirect emissions in Scope 3. And this according to GAGP methodology, resulting from aircraft fueling with SAF. As we know, according to the last consultation I made, at least the GAGP has not yet recognized the SAF for insetting purposes, but the SBTi has already established parameters to this end. There is a guide from the STBI, known as Aviation Guide, which establishes the parameter for insetting by using SAF in the inventories of the companies participating in the programs. These programs could provide airlines with funds for paying additional costs for SAF purchases by selling Scope 3 environmental attributes to be accounted as indirect emissions by airline corporate clients. So voluntary markets could be much more efficient than mandates, since the origin of the financing for financing the SAF would come from industry more prepared to face this cost than airlines, which is precisely the corporate airline clients. Implementation of voluntary markets depend on some factors. Some of them are in place, some of them are not in place. But to summarize, the following are the factors that are required for implementing voluntary markets. Clear rules to determine proportion of emissions reduction comparing to fueling with SAF and fossil, proper certifications to assure veracity of reduction levels according to SAF production pathway, transparency and traceability of the environmental attribute after segregation of the environmental attribute from the fuel, and rules and proceedings to avoid double counting. What depends on centralized registries like the ones that has already been set up by ISCC and RSP. Based on this concept and rules, And after the GHGP recognition of SAF emission reduction calculation methods, the voluntary market will be an important source of funds to allow scalability of SAF. So in essence, answering the question, the corporate client should be the one bearing the costs in the voluntary market, and that's perhaps an efficient way to allow scalability and crack the chicken and the egg dilemma.
Perfect, Ricardo. Thank you. Thank you very much. Indeed, it's a great pathway for us to try to solve this dilemma that we've been discussing here. Well, we have reached the end of this webinar. Unfortunately, we do not have time for further questions. I just received a message from the organizers saying that we have to wrap up here. But the discussion do not have to end here. I'm sure my colleagues will be able to receive questions offline. Harry will share our profiles as will I, by the way. And of course, we have the opportunity to see each other in person at the Congress in just a few weeks, and we'll be able to continue these discussions. I'd like to thank again the panelists who took the time to be with us here today. Thank you very much for all your valuable contributions today. And thank you the audience. Thank you again the Organization of Sustainable Aviation Futures for organizing this webinar. I'll see you in São Paulo, but now I have to hand over to Harry. Is that correct, Harry? Are you with us?
That's correct. Thank you so much. Thank you for your interaction and a really thought-provoking conversation. As we said, unfortunately, we just ran out of time today. If you do have any questions, please do direct them to any of our panelists today. We very much look forward to the prospect of seeing you all in Sao Paulo. As mentioned, please do reach out for further information. But with that, thank you so much for your time. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and see you all very soon. Thank you very much.